we start taking questions, let me kind of tell you a little bit about what I'm working on. Let me make sure, this is billed as a Star Trek Continues panel, isn't it? Okay, so I do want us to talk about that, believe me. I love talking about that. I love what we've done. I'm very proud of our series. But I also know that there are a lot of anime fans here because this is the closest thing that I'll have to a panel this weekend. So we may mix it up a little bit. So Star Trek fans, don't be like, why are we talking about anime? Anime fans like, why are we talking about Star Trek? So let's, let's make it a little bit of everything, all right? I was just cast to play a big role in Star Trek Online, which is the video of the online game. It's the TOS arc, so I'm in and I'm a captain of a ship. Now the reason this is really super special is because while Star Trek Continues is purely a fan production and purely a labor of love, Star Trek Online is official, licensed Star Trek, which means that I can now say that after 53 years on planet Earth, I am officially part of the Star Trek universe. So, my character's name is Captain Isaac Garrett. And Star Trek fans in the room will know that there was a Captain Garrett in, I believe, Voyager? Was it Voyager? It was a female captain. Was it Voyager?
TNG.
What was it? Whatever you say. I believe it. I trust you. But this is one of her ancestors, who was this captain. And you guys, my ship rendezvous with the Enterprise. And I'm like actually sharing a scene with Leonard Nimoy. Yeah, the 12-year-old in me is nerding out. They recorded thousands of lines of random dialogue with Leonard years ago. So that the Spock in the game is actually Leonard. So it's really a thrill. And I know that George, I know that Walter Koenig and several others of the originals are a part of this game, which makes it even more of a privilege. And my Scotty from my series, Star Trek Continues, has been cast to play his dad. So Chris Doohan is going to be voicing Scotty in the game. By the way, 7 is done, as I mentioned yesterday, and it'll be premiering in the fall at Salt Lake Comic-Con. So I can't wait for you to see it. It's really great. Okay, first question from our lovely maid here.
I was wondering how happy you were to be a part of Star Trek in any way.
Oh my gosh. Girl, how old are you? 17? Okay. When I was like 10, I lived for Star Trek. You don't even know. I drove my mother insane. I'm an only child, and my parents divorced, so I lived with my mom and I. It was just the two of us. And I would lock myself in my room and build phasers and communicators and models, and I was obsessed. I would record the show every day on a cassette player. I know you don't understand what that is. Most of you younger people in the room, cassette, what the heck? It's a little, it records this tape and it records sound. So I would record them every day, but then, after I recorded them, I would put the cassette player under my pillow at night, and I would go to sleep listening to episodes of the original series of Star Trek, and I memorized them, like word for word, sound effect, music, absorbed them. Got my mom to teach me to use a sewing machine so I could make my uniforms, because she got sick of making them for me. She's like, look, Victor, I'll just teach you to use a sewing machine. Just leave me the hell alone. I don't want to hear any more about Star Trash. That's what she used to call it. She used to call it Star Trash. And I was like, Mom! I'm not kidding. My Uncle Paul would tease me about it. He would call him Dr. Spock instead of Mr. Spock. He'd be like, Dr. Spock, beep, 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 doctor. And I'd shut up! I was obsessed. So imagine now being able to be a part of that. And to walk onto a set, a perfect recreation of the set, in a perfect uniform, and play this character that I loved like a father figure when I was a little boy. It's beyond description. And I'm glad we don't make any money, because I think that would cheapen it somehow. I have no interest in making any money with it. I make a living other ways. You know what I mean? I work hard, and I spend my money, my excess money, on the things that I love, like you do, right? You work, and then you get a check, right? And you spend all your money on two things. Your bills, and then what's left, you buy stuff you like, right? You go on a vacation, or you get a cool thing, you get TV, or some DVDs, or you buy a video game. I'm no different. The only difference is that once I pay my bills, the money that I have left over, I spend on something I love. And that is Star Trek Continues. So the cool thing is that a lot of people, other people benefit from it. They've enjoyed it around the world. And that's the biggest thrill, because I only did it to begin with because I loved the show. And I wanted to pay tribute and homage to the show that I loved. So to know that so many people are enjoying it is just beyond humbling and an honor. And I'm so, so grateful to be a part of it in some way. When people write me and say, you know, this is like finding lost episodes of the original series. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, I couldn't imagine when we started it that anybody would ever feel that way, you know? So it's such a real honor and a privilege. So thank you. Great question. Who's got a Star Trek question? Oh no, that was a Star Trek question. Ta-da! What's your question?
If you could pick any race from the Star Trek universe, which one would you be?
You know what? I gotta tell you, I'm all about the Kirk. That's all I can tell you. You know what? I don't want to get heavy here, but I have to tell you. I was thinking, as I was working, I was down at our studio with a couple of friends building sets one day. Like nobody else is there. I'm there working, like say, building engineering, which you saw for the first time in episode 6, right? Beautiful. It's never been done. Never been built until we finished it. Huge. 2 stories, the big core going off in the distance. In the distance. And I was working on it, and I was thinking, I was sitting there pounding nails, and I'm looking around this monstrous thing that I've built with my friends. And I thought, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, why do I love this show so much? Why do I love Star Trek so much? What is it about Captain Kirk? Why? Why am I so driven by this? To the point of spending literally almost $150,000 of my own savings. As opposed to taking money from the project, I literally put my own money into it because I loved it and I wanted to give back to the show that I felt gave me so much, you know? And I was thinking, what is it about this show that I love, and Kirk in particular? And I realized what it was. I discovered Star Trek at the exact moment in my life when my parents divorced. And my dad left, and I had no relationship with him, and I lived with my mom. You see the connection? No father figure, no dad in the house. And I find this TV show with this leader, this handsome, strong, brave leader of men who loves his friends and loves his ship, and he has these goals and, you know, ethical, moral, I love it. I fell in love with the character, and he was like my dad. And that, even now, is, I think, why I grew up loving that character so much. So, ask me what race I want to be. I want to be whatever race Captain Kirk is. I think that's the only thing I could ever say. Let's go over here. Yes. Yes. That's for you. Pardon?
Oh God, I just completely lost my question. Oh, yeah. Could you give us a little bit of what you memorized from the original show?
Oh, Lord. That's all its own. That's all its own now. Oh my gosh. What's an episode? Name an episode. The Trills. Ooh, you guys are good. Wow. I have so many going through my mind. I can't even, oh gosh. How about Doomsday Machine? Remember when they beam over the constellation and they find Captain Decker, and Kirk's like, "What happened, Matt?" That thing. What did you see? They say there's no devil, Jim, but there is. Right out of hell. I saw it. Where's your crew? On the third planet. There is no third planet. Don't you think I know that? There was, not anymore. They told me they begged me for help, 400 of them. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. Tell something.
Well, I know how much you love Captain Kirk.
Yes.
Or, what's his name?
William Shatner.
Yes, him. But does he know how much you love him?
Yes. And I have a restraining order to prove it. No, you know what? This is something else I'm very, very, very humbled and honored by. When I was a little boy, I went to Star Trek conventions. Just like you guys go to anime conventions and pop culture conventions. I went to Star Trek conventions. 70-pound, dripping wet Vic Mignogna, a little scrawny kid in his Star Trek, in his Captain Kirk uniform that he made. And I met DeForest Kelley, Jimmy Doohan, George Takei, Walter Koenig, Nichelle Nichols. I met all of the original kids, Leonard Nimoy, when I was 12 and 13. I never met Bill Shatner because he never came to any of the conventions near where I lived. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I was doing Fan Expo in Toronto. I was signing there as a voice actor guest. And Mr. Shatner does a lot of the Canadian conventions because he's from Canada. He's from Montreal. So he was there. And it was my birthday weekend. Labor Day weekend, it was, my birthday is the 27th of August, and it was like, literally, like 26 through 29 was the convention. So I was there, and the convention chairman came up to me one morning, he said, "Today's your birthday, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, man, thank you for asking." He goes, "What do you want for your birthday? You gonna get yourself something nice on the show floor, like vendors, or what are you gonna do for your birthday?" And I said, "You know what? I'd sure love to meet William Shatner." And the convention chairman said, "I think I can make that happen." So I walked with him down to the loading dock to meet Mr. Shatner and his manager. They pulled up, he got out, he introduced me, and I walked with them to Bill's, I'm allowed to call him that now, to Bill's autograph session and his Q&A session. And we chatted, just casually. And, oh, that was just the beginning, Bill. As of now, my manager is the same, who books me into conventions like this, is also Bill's manager, which means he books me into a lot of the same conventions that Bill does. We've probably done, I'll bet, 10 conventions together now. And like, some of them have been like Dubai, where we go together and we sightsee together and we have dinner at the end of the day together. And I've had the opportunity. And by the way, the first 15 times I sat and chatted with him, I never even said the word Star Trek. Because I wanted him to see me as another actor who's just at the show signing autographs, right? I didn't want him to see me as just like some fan that he's met a million times over the last 40 years or 50 years, but as a peer. So never talked about Star Trek, ever. We would joke and talk about all kinds of things, and he would reach out. "I've got to tell you something, Vic. I love that shirt." And I would be like, thank you, Bill. And the 12-year-old in me is like, Captain Kirk is touching my shoulder. But I always played it cool because I respect him and I admire him so much. So finally, we were in Dubai at the Middle East Film and Comic-Con last year. And people were coming up to me at the convention and saying, I love Star Trek Continues. Like, what you guys are doing is great, and you're an awesome Captain Kirk. And Bill's hearing this stuff. Like, he's within earshot, and his wife was with him, and she was within earshot. So one evening, we're having dinner at this restaurant, and his wife, who's sitting, like we're at a round table, she's right here, Bill's sitting beside her, and she says, Vic, what is this Star Trek thing everyone's talking about with you? Is it an animated thing? And I said, well, no, and I started telling her, not him, talking to her about it, but he's right there, I mean, like, sitting beside her. So finally, I said, you know what, Liz, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I got up and I walked around the table and I knelt down beside her and I showed her a couple of pictures from my phone. And she went, oh my God. She's like, you look like young Bill. And Bill said, let me see. Oh my God. Oh my God. And as I was kneeling in the space between he and his wife, and he had my phone in his hand, let's say this is Bill, I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, this is all because of you. I said, you had such a profound impact on me when I was a little boy. And your character was very much of a father figure to me. And he looked over at me and he put his arm around me and said, that's extraordinary. And so without getting too much into it, he knows I had the opportunity, nay, the privilege, to tell him in a very private, personal setting how much you meant to me. Sorry. Okay, question. Wait, 1 second. Yes, right here.
I just wanted to ask, like, out of all of the roles that you have ever done, what's your most memorable? Not the favorite, but the most memorable.
You know, I would have to say the most memorable was Tamaki from Oron. But there's a reason. There's a legitimate reason for that answer. It's not just because everybody goes, woo! It's because Oron High School Host Club was one of the few shows that I did that I knew about before I did it. Most shows you go into, for those of you that aren't anime fans per se, dubbing anime, you find out about it like right then. Like, you'll get cast and you'll be called into the studio and that's where you learn about the character. There is no prep time, there is no, what kind of research do you do? No, there's no research. I mean, you go in, they say, okay, here's your guy, he's like this, he's kind of a jerk, but and he loves his brother, blah, 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 go. You know what I mean? And you try to come up with something, and the director will say, okay, that's kind of good, but slow him down a little bit, make him a little dumber. Don't make him as articulate. Make him a little dumber. And, or maybe nerd him out a little bit. Maybe make it a little more nasally. Or dark, bring it down a little bit. And then once you zero in on the voice, then you record the character. But there's not a lot of prep time. It happens very quickly. Caitlin Glass told me about Oron before the show was even licensed by an English company. She gave me a disc with some episodes, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this show so much, and I love this blonde character so much, and I kind of committed the cardinal sin that you jinx yourself by falling in love with a character before you're even cast to play the character. Like, there was little to no chance that I would play the role when I fell in love with it. As luck or grace would have it, the opportunity came. Funimation licensed the show. Then Caitlin was hired to direct the show, and I auditioned, and I got to play him. So when I recorded that show, I savored every minute every word that I got to say for Oren because I already loved it going into it. Does that make sense? Tanaki's more attitude than anything, right? I mean, this is pretty much Tanaki's voice. You just have to soften it and make it a little more poetic, right? A little more lyrical. That's about all you need to do. I have picked a girl, it's you, my love.